All right. How many of you have Googled something in the last week and clicked a result from the very top of your screen that started with something like, according to this podcast episode from? Now, some of you might have done that. I actually have a number of times, and I've actually even seen this on TV commercials that I've been watching. My wife and I have been rewatching Criminal Minds, which is always a scary show to watch. But the Culligan Water Company did this where they used podcast results in their ad, which is absolutely wild. Now, here's what's happening at a crazy pace right now. Even if you're not seeing this, people are looking to that little section of the top of the search engine more than ever. So I want to give you a real example of this new concept called AEO, Answer Engine Optimization. It's a close cousin to search engine optimization. I also learned it's also called, I believe, GEO or Generative Engine Optimization. All revolves around generative AI. And so we're going to open with a 100% real case of how this showed up in my life, not just sitting on the couch and watching TV, to give you an exact idea of what we're going to be educating on today. So, quick story time. My wife has a classic car. It's a 1970 Ford Thunderbird. It's a super cool set of wheels. Her birthday was about 2 weeks ago, and because it was her first Mother's Day, I wanted to make this one really special. We welcomed our son Jack back in November. So I dug into Claude AI with all of the documentation I had for this vehicle. And I created a very special history for it. Now, AI is really good for compiling information, especially a story like her car has. But I took this one step further because the information we were able to compile was something I wanted to share. So I asked Claude, hey, Claude, are there any podcasts out there that might be interested in having me and the missus as a guest to tell the story of her car? Claude thought for a second, and he provided me with the answer that you see on screen right now. I reached out to a bunch of shows that he provided with a pitch, and wouldn't you know it, a bunch of them got back to me, including the top choice, which you'll see on the screen here, to all the cars I've loved before. We're recording that with the host on Memorial Day. And admittedly, after meeting him and listening to his show, this was a 10 out of 10 recommendation, and many of the other 9 on the list were quite strong recommendations as well. So the question that we want to ask ourselves right now is like, how did those podcasts, specifically Doug's, which was the 10 out of 10 literal perfect fit, get into Claude to be named at the top of the list when I'm asking for a podcast about cars to tell my story on? Well, it did quite a few things, and we're going to walk you through each of those today so that your own show can get thrown in the mix when your next perfect customer asks AI who they should be working with. I am delighted to introduce my friend and co-presenter today, Patty Dominguez. She's fabulous. She's been key in helping me understand this concept to you today. Patty's going to be taking over in the middle part of this presentation, and she'll really start to dig into this concept in just a few moments here. But before she does, I want to set a little bit more of the stage here, other than, showing off that amazing picture of that beautiful 1970 Ford Thunderbird. Only 17,000 miles. Fabulous stuff. Anyway, so that's what we got on the show to share, which is super cool. Anyway, there are tons of B2B podcasts out there that fly under the radar. The problem isn't content quality, but it's actually like structural invisibility. The great niche podcasts that are out there get overlooked, not because they have bad guests or because they sound bad. They actually might have really great production values, but because nothing about how they're built signals to AI or buyers, this is a great place to go for what you're looking for. It's not providing an answer. You can have a great host, brilliant guests, production quality that sounds like it's a big network show, and still be completely invisible to your buyer who is typing a question into an AI tool at 10 p.m. when they're thinking about what they're doing at work tomorrow. The phrase I keep coming back to in these webinars is knowledge is cheap, wisdom is rare, or wisdom is human in some cases. Any AI can give you knowledge. I can ask ChatGPT, I can ask Claude, I can ask anybody. A list of onboarding practices, 5 ways to reduce customer churn. But wisdom, that only comes from someone who's actually lived it, made mistakes, succeeded, failed, and that only comes from people. That's what a podcast carries that nothing else can fully replicate. Problem is, most podcasts are just burying their wisdom. They're recording and then they're not doing anything with it. They're not creating a transcript. They don't have structure to their web pages. They don't even have their presence on their own website. It's just audio or video sitting in a feed waiting to be stumbled upon. So understanding how B2B podcasts are promoted is also a major differentiating factor here. Few smaller shows have any sort of meaningful budget. They're not promoted like your B2C or your D2C shows. Generally, there's no ads, no billboards. They rely on LinkedIn and word of mouth, and that's an organic style of growth that sometimes only goes so far. A great producer friend of mine dropped this stat in our webinar last March when we kind of did a practice run of this about podcast advertising. He right now works in a D2C podcast or direct consumer podcast. And from his experience, it costs roughly $60,000 a year in advertising to generate 60,000 downloads on his podcast. And that is, honestly, that's straight up buying listens. And those might not even be the right people. He runs a very geographically local show, and he's got to be very careful that he's buying people from Minnesota and not anywhere else. So we can throw money into the fires of advertising, but that's generally not going to do what we want it to do because it's not targeted at giving wisdom or answers to your audience. What's missing from most overlooked shows isn't more episodes or more promotion or anything like that. It's the structure and proof that gives AI and buyers a reason to treat your show like a source of truth. A niche show's greatest strength and its greatest weakness are the same thing. It's specific. It's that specificity. You can't compete with NPR for volume, and you shouldn't. But you can own your industry watering hole, and that's oftentimes worth far more, especially if your target audience is high net worth or is seeking high ticket products or services. All right. Bernie, my wonderful producer, it is poll time for the barometer for everybody here. Many of you may have a podcast. How's it doing right now? We're going to put a little poll up here on the screen. How many downloads a week does your B2B podcast receive? Under 100? I don't know yet because I don't have one. 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000. Lock those in, and we'll be in good shape here. So we got 7 responses. Okay, so some very small shows here. Not anything large yet. We do have a number of folks who haven't even started this yet. I love when people are in an exploratory stage. I think that's probably just about everybody here. We'll close that out. And we'll share those results, which is great. So again, a couple small shows here and then some other folks who are in the learning mode, which is great. So it's now time to bring the person who's going to make the middle of this really shine. I'm super excited about this particular section because it is in the dress rehearsals. It was so good. So we introduced her earlier. It's the fantastic Patty Dominguez, and she is the founder of More Leverage. I got that right? Because
you got it right. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I kept on screwing it up earlier. So she's the one who built it in the framework that we're going to be walking through in sections 2 and 3 here. And I have been so looking forward to this. Patty, before I turn this over to you, one housekeeping thing for everybody. We want you to ask questions. There's going to be a ton to learn here, and be sure to pop those over in the chat, and we'll dig into them as we do have a Q&A section later in here. So to transition us, Patty, into learning this really kind of intensive part of this program, why don't you tell us why this topic is so important to you, and then by extension, why it should matter to the rest of us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to first and foremost thank you for having me on your show here or for this, because I think this is really important. As someone, I personally have had 3 different podcasts, a total of over 400 episodes, and I wish somebody would have told me all these things when I started it. So the fact that you're here means like you're interested to say, well, how do we take this concept of podcasting and put it in a way that you can build your brand? Because that's truly the whole background I have. I came from Fortune 50. We were obsessed with like doing brand launches and how do you build the brand, like the equity that you have. And so now I live in that intersection of taking that concept and AI. And when you put those two together and you understand how to leverage AI to help you grow your brand, it's a game changer. So I don't think it's a, should we do this? It's a, you have to do this. And the intention here of what I'm going to be sharing today is I'm going to be sharing practical things that you can do to help you, right? So I think it's super exciting.
I think so too. All right. So here we go. I know your first topic is 3 signals that make a podcast get chosen. So I'm going to relinquish the the deck here and let's get you into sharing yours. While that is happening, I do want to welcome everybody who got here a little bit after we started. Thank you all for being here. There's going to be great stuff on this. We will be sending a replay roughly in the next, I'd say, 48 hours or so, getting that all packed up and together on YouTube in our playlist. So we're in good shape. Patty, whenever you are ready.
Yes, I'm going to take it away. And so here are the three things that you can do straight away. I call it the chosen brand, right? The thing that is going to help you to get seen. And the first one of which is your identity. Okay. And the identity piece of it is really has everything to do with who you are and who you serve. So from a very fundamental standpoint, that is what someone is looking, what podcast can I listen to? And so what you want to be is very clear around the type of podcast that you have. And you'd be surprised because a lot of people, when they think about their title of the podcast, they perhaps would go to perhaps like a name that is clever, or maybe it's cute, but it's not necessarily clear. So when you understand the premise of getting your identity right, it's really essential so that you are really consistent about that name, about the identity, every single place, every single time. And as boring as that may sound and mundane, that is what AI is crawling for, right? So you want to describe yourself the same way on your website, on your LinkedIn, the podcast bio, the guest pitches that you have, same words every single time, because that pattern is what AI is looking for. And in the absence of that, it's fragmented. Okay. And what you don't want is having these fragmented ways. And even something as simple as if you put a the in front of the podcast episode, or sorry, the show name, that's going to matter. So you can't have a mix of that, because what happens is AI is going to skip you all together. Okay. So you want to be very, very clear around what it is that you talk about. So from an identity standpoint, the problem you solve ideally in the name. And then when you do have that, make sure that you're using that everywhere. So I think I'm going to stop share for any comments that you have about that, Rob.
Yeah, definitely. This is something I've actually had happen to me, and it's actually for the folks that I have uh, in working with me is, from a production standpoint, identity is where I see shows leak authority the fastest, and it's something we really work hard with our customers to align. I've worked with hosts who have had a really great niche for their show, and they've kind of locked in on that. But then their LinkedIn bio describes completely different things, and that it's items that aren't like relevant to their business. It's great that you're a dad and that you're a churchgoer and a bacon enthusiast, but that doesn't help you in this case. And Patty, I think what you're describing is like branding discipline. One
Yes.
signal, one message everywhere all the time. And even for somebody like myself, many of you will notice I have two B's in my name. If I spell my name R-O-B versus R-O-B-B, that breaks that like pattern matching thing, which is just absolutely like that kind of blows my mind a little bit, because like I'm the same person. When I was 13, I was Rob with one B. There's a whole story behind how I got the second one, but like I've gone by Rob with two B's for the past 27 years. And so that kind of matching, even if it's just a typo in this case, could really really hurt me. So again, that branding discipline I think is absolutely great. And plus, I know there's a guy a couple towns north of me who's also a Robert Conlon, and so making sure that I stand out for that and who I am and my brand, that's always really important. So Patty, back to you. Talking about credibility next. Why should
Yes,
anyone
I love
trust
credibility. Yeah, I love credibility. Why? Because we're in the era, y'all, especially in the era of AI, where it's all about show me the receipts, right? Because how many times have you heard somebody's like, we're the best at, XYZ, or we're the A plus most popular? It doesn't work anymore as effectively, okay? Because with credibility, this is the next pillar, if you will. Credibility is all about why should anybody trust you? Okay. Do you have the backup? Do you have the receipts to prove that credibility? And so here's some ways to show up. So if you're saying that you are an expert at XYZ, what other entities are out in the web sphere that talk about that, such as articles, press releases, other podcasts that you've been on that have included that their link, pardon me, or any third party real proof, a white paper, a blog post that you have also participated on. So you can see, and I think what Rob was talking about is like, yes, you want to have the discipline, but you want to harmonize all this wherever you can. So from an identity standpoint, showing up consistently every single time. From a credibility standpoint, being really strategic about it, right? And not just saying yes to every podcast that people are inviting you to. I made that mistake. Why? Because I would just get on any podcast, not understanding they didn't have a proper web page for the episode. I couldn't have any of the links that I had shared. It didn't matter. So if you're going to be putting in all this effort, you want to show up with the understanding that by having these elements in place, and I'll go more into the exactly what you need to do, but credibility, just think about it that way. Because if you're getting on other shows, you want to get quoted. You want to be linked wherever possible, because that helps you in aggregate build your credibility.
It's funny that you mentioned that kind of credibility thing, because back in March when we first started these, Patty, I was talking about my concept, which is called guest elo. And when we do the replay for this, if you want to go back to the March um, episode of this and check out what that is, basically it's how you rank in the podcasting world and play at the level you belong at. It's what being intentional, I guess, is what it is. Being intentional about who you bring on your show. It's not like necessarily gatekeeping, but it's protecting kind of your credibility signals. And so I think every guest that you have is, what do you think, reinforcing or maybe muddying the profile there? And then of course you mentioned like the outside mentions pieces, something I'd add a producer note to, getting your guests to share and reference that episode as the like outside mention is a great way to build a third party signal that you're talking about, Patty. And if you have a plan to make this easy for your guests, it really pays major dividends. Oftentimes, a well-shared podcast episode that is, going to be a great concrete pillar for this can get like 3 to 10 times the number of downloads than one that doesn't get shared this way. So I think that's a really important thing of that credibility when somebody is sharing the content that you're making with them for your podcast.
Awesome. So now we're going to move to pillar number 3, which is your visibility. And this one is whether your podcast can actually be found. So while you may have heard, hey, if you want to have your podcast ranked, you need more podcasting, you need more of that exposure. Yes. But what is also really helpful, and I kind of gave you a peek under the tent initially, is that can your website be found? Just posting your website on Spotify or on Apple iTunes isn't enough. One of the biggest opportunities that you have is put a page specific to that episode on your website, right? So that every episode has its own page, its own domain, not just a Spotify link, right? Your website, consider it. And this is super important. I actually, over on LinkedIn, I wrote an article about this very thing. Your website is your home base. It's never been a better time to really leverage what you have with your website, right? Because so if you think about it this way, the website becomes a hub, and everywhere else that you're posting it, it just becomes that spoke over here and another spoke over here, etc. Another thing is the full transcript is really essential. And I'll go a little bit more into that. But when you have the proper setup so that your episode can be found, can be visible, and it doesn't matter that it can be found 2 years from now because you had the proper structure, right? And we actually had a side conversation about that because you had talked about how you had certain shows that just killed it. I think it was like blog posts that people go to every now and then still, right? So that just helps to substantiate the magic of when you have these elements in place in the right way, you are building assets in your ecosystem that helps your brand grow. And then the third point here, and I'll go more into this as well, when you put your content out there, when you put your podcast out there, start with YouTube, because YouTube is where AI tools is leaning in heavily right now. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be on Spotify and Apple. Absolutely, you should, but those are the channels for the people that are already subscribed to you. But make sure that you're putting your show on YouTube first, because it's just going to help you to be found, right? Because the name of the game here is how can we get more ears hearing our podcast? And it just goes to show you these are ways to do it. And, with the ways we talked about, they're free if you think about it, which is really cool.
Right. And it is, it's eyeballs too, because, video podcasting is very much a big thing. So, and I guess, Patty, I feel like visibility is the one thing that's the fixable fastest, if you will.
Yes.
And it's one I think hosts don't really think about in this way. AI looks at the web pages and it can't listen to it. You can't listen to your podcast. It can only read it, and that's why I know you jump on the transcript part of it really hard. Transcripts, show notes, episode pages, and I have to small disclaimer here, Patty. You've taught me so much about this. Like I have work orders in to have my website for my own show and things like that to convert to this. So if you go to it today and you're like, Rob, you're not practicing what you preach, like it's coming. Don't worry about it. But like the the work that goes into this is something that can really move the needle. And uh, your episode page, everything you do feeds into this, for the machines to decide whether the buyer hears about you or at all. And I think that's one of those really interesting things that is like, did you ever think 15 years ago or even 5 years ago that we'd be having machines kind of make decisions for us on what gets
I
served
know we're
content
here.
wise?
We're
Yeah,
here.
here we are, right?
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. Well, hey, that was a just a banger of a first section there. I
But
learned a ton, and I've seen this before, which is great. So go
so
ahead,
hold
Patty.
on though, Rob. Hold it,
Yeah,
if I may. I just have two more slides because I really want to compound why
that's
this is so
right.
important. Okay, so here are the last two. Now, when you look at the signals that I talked about, identity, credibility, and visibility, and let's say that you were to tweak it and improve each of these, just adding more context to it, adding a little bit more. These are multipliers. These three pillars are multiplied together. But if you're only doing half of the effort or it's only half as effective, it's the aggregate of 12% improvement, if you think about it, right? So three decent pillars of identity, credibility, and visibility is just going to give you a decent show. But it's still going to be invisible because that 12% improvement is so minuscule. Conversely, if you understand the premise that I share, that identity, credibility, and visibility are working together, these three signals matter when they are fit together, right? They become multipliers. Now, let's say that you really optimize because you're hearing this information here, you're going to take action on what's shared today. Check out how significantly it compounds, right? It's a dramatic improvement. So these same three levers are going to give you a wildly different outcome, which is why you cannot skip it. You can't just say, I'm going to work on identity, but I'm not going to work on credibility. No, they all work together. It's only as good as the one that you work at the least that's going to hold you back. So think of it again like chains in a link. I hope I said that right. Like I'm super caffeinated today. They're all linked together. You want to make sure to leverage that wherever possible.
Got it. Okay, well, that was all one amazing reason to watch the replay of this. And in a moment, Patty, I know you're going to give us the other reason why people are going to demand that we send them the deck from you and me in their follow-up emails. So everybody who's here, don't worry about note taking or anything like that. It's all coming to you in the next 48 hours. But before we go into your second half of content here, Patty, I wanted to pop up another quick poll, Bernie, if you would. And this is kind of a gut check for everybody. Which of these three signals is the weakest for your show or your personal brand right now? Of the three that Patty talked about, identity, I'm not consistent about who I am and who I serve. Credibility, I don't have a strong third party. Validation, and then visibility, my content isn't structured for AI to find it. Or, hey, maybe it's all three. We'll let that run a little bit while folks grind through those rather lengthy, what do you call them, response choices there. And yeah, Bernie, you can close that out. We'll be in good shape. Okay. All right. So identity, one person. Visibility, five. Wow, that's more than half, I believe. And then all three work from scratch. Yeah, that's definitely, I think, the one answer that folks can be like, ooh, I kind of do need to take a look at that. But I know for me, before I met Patty, it was definitely identity. I had a few different ways I talked about what I do, and I've worked to streamline that. We're still finding some things that I need to learn, like getting FAQs on all of our blogs. But again, that's a me thing where I need to go and learn Wix better than the lack of actual knowledge of the theory behind it. So, no matter what your answer was to that poll, it's okay. There was no wrong answer because a lot of this can be fixed. And knowing which signal is your weakest may be exactly where the work starts, so you can shore that all up, as Patty kind of showed you. So again, good news. She's going to give you the next practical layer that takes these three signals and makes them stronger at the episode level. But before we start this next section, A reminder, pop those questions into the chat. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of them here because we're going to have Q&A after Patty's done with her next section here. So this is where it gets actionable, and this is called the episode stack, and it starts with transcripts. And so, Patty, I know you probably recall prior to fall of 2022, there was a whole transcription industry, and those poor folks lost their jobs basically overnight because ChatGPT showed up.
Yes, yes, it was
Mm-hmm.
expensive, wasn't it? Like, I
Oh,
don't know, like $1 a word, or like I don't know what it was, but it was
it used
expensive.
to be, I think, $1 a minute. We
Yeah,
still use Rev for some very specific transcription stuff, and I think it's $1 a minute or $1.50 a minute now, which is still insane. But that's human transcripts, not AI transcripts, and I suspect they nowadays are a a little bit loosey goosey with that particular definition of human transcripts. Doesn't feel like it's the good value it used to be, but
yes,
um, suffice to say, transcripts were super time consuming. They were messy, and they took a lot more money than today. I can get a show transcript for $1 right now versus like $150 for a human one back in 2022 or now. So those transcripts are easier to come by, and they're the key to starting your episode stack. So Patty, take us in as to
yeah.
why the transcript is the base of this.
Yeah, so the idea behind this is okay, so now you understand that the three pillars, if you will, identity, credibility, visibility, helps you to become the chosen brand, or in Robb's case, the chosen podcast. So now all of these things conceptually, they make sense, but in the absence of action, it's all for nothing, right? So the idea behind this section is, how do we take your episodes that you're doing and taking action on what can be done with those pillars in mind? Okay, so this is the episode stack. And that first element is, what you want is a real written out transcript, word for word. And the way that it's seen is, and we kind of glossed over that a little bit, is that AI cannot listen to your podcast, it has to read it. So that particular information is for AI, right? You want to make sure that the speaker names are spelled out properly. So I was just on a podcast not too long ago, and they spelled my name with an I. And I'm like, nobody spells Patty with an I that is serious about being a Patty. I'm like, my name is Patty with a Y. So I contacted them. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a pain, but can you move it? And it's not because I'm being picky, is because I know that that episode won't be found the same way, right? We want to make sure that that information is harmonized. So you want your speaker names attributed throughout. Timestamps, of course, the names of the guests, the companies, the books, the frameworks. I have a podcast bio. You want to make sure that you have that if you're on somebody else's podcast. But these are the ways that you can make and leverage this opportunity, because again, AI is reading what your information is all about. Okay, and obviously, if you have these AI tools that is transcribing, just do a human in the loop move, and to make sure that the information is spelled correctly, right? That everything there that is accurate. And again, if you as a podcast owner post that information, the transcript, on your website, not on the podcast platform, because remember, if we're thinking about how do I leverage this asset so that it has longevity in it, right? So this is just one of those components to make that happen. So something as simple and mundane as a transcript, like, it looks ugly on my page. It's not for you. It's not for the humans. It's for the AI to read. And that's what's really important there.
It's not for you. It's for the AI. Wow. I think the spelling piece is. You mentioned looping people back in, Patty. As far as like, yes, AI or Descript or whoever you're using can produce that transcript, but I think putting people back into it and finding those like idiosyncrasies that the AI doesn't get. Again, back to my example of 1B, 2B. It hears Robb Conlon, but it doesn't know that I'm two B's. And again, I think there's a term, entity matching. Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Yes,
Um, I want to make sure I got that right. But I think it breaks the second you misspell that. Robb, two B's versus Robb with one B. And
right.
if your guest is from like a well-known company and you've got their name wrong, I feel like that is like the big like chop that like completely disconnects it from that. And that discoverability just kind of evaporates, and it's easy to go through a platform like Descript or even just a Word document that you've produced from this, and backspace, Y instead of I or whatever it might be. So it's a 30-second fix, because you could control F most things. I think that's a very good bare minimum. Like just search and correct names in your transcripts. Like that's a very good like step 0 to 1, I think, for most people, which is great. So I love how deep you went on that because it seems a written out transcript, it's more than just that. So
Yes,
let's
most definitely.
move to element number 2 here.
All right. Element number 2, I think, is so cool. And a lot of people don't know that. Hold on, let me do this so that you guys get a nice, clear view. A lot of people don't know this one. And I want everybody leaning in and really paying attention to this because your competition is not doing it and you can do it here. A short answer at the top of the page. So don't forget, you have your podcast episode, right? You have a singular page where you have the transcript, you have the podcast episode. Well, what you want to do is make sure to have a short answer at the top of the page. And that short answer at the top of the page, it may look kind of ugly or whatever, but that's not the point because this is, again, for the AI. 3 to 5 sentences at the top of the page, right? Above the player in the transcript, like I talked about. And that is answering the question of what the episode covers. Now, here's the important part of it. You want to write it like an answer, not a description. There's a difference, right? Because you may want to say, in this episode, I cover or have a good conversation with Rob. Nobody cares. The AI doesn't care. The AI is looking for, in this conversation, we talk about how to drive more visibility to podcast, right? That's what the AI is looking for. So it's nuanced in that way. So just think of it. AI is looking for answers, not descriptions. That's a very important point. Okay, so don't talk about your vague claims or the kind of superfluous information that doesn't matter. No jargon or anything like that. Just be really specific about what that episode includes. And remember to have it skewed so that it's answer first. I hope that makes sense. But I promise you, this is important because the AI is crawling pages top to bottom. And it's looking at, okay, give me what this episode page is about. That's what it's looking for. Let it be easy for the AI to find you. And that is one of the ways that most podcasting people don't have this in place. And such an easy fix to be found. Rob.
Gotcha. I guess I feel like this is kind of the one element that pulls double duty on uh on show notes, if you will. Because like right now, many show notes are written like you described. Like in this episode, it's like that could be for any sitcom or anything like that. Whereas it's just a description. But what you're talking about, Patty, I think is an answer, which is usually to a question that's what, why, or how. And that's what I think, that's not only what people are, not I think, I know that people are asking of answer engines. We often use in our show notes 3 to 4 timestamp topics that frequently begin with how and why. Those are the two that I usually coach folks on. What, a little bit less so. But those question words are the two things that I think are really important to get looped in there, because that's how people are talking to these engines right now, which is pretty darn interesting. I learned about this first probably about a year ago, that people were actually, not Googling things anymore. They were AEOing or GEOing or ChatGPTing things more than ever, which is just absolutely insane. So,
and it's really
yeah.
important to know that, because even now there is the belief that in the next 2-3 years it's going to go all to voice, so that high school typing class you took is not even necessary anymore, because everything's moving to voice. So these are moves that it's good to start doing now, because this is where everything is going. So
yeah, feel for those kids, because man, it's going to be an interesting time to put children through an education system. That's for sure. Awesome. All right. Element 3, and I do see a question over there for the Q&A here, and just after we get through all of these, so we'll put a pin in that one, which is great, and then we'll go into element 3 here, Patty. Show notes that name names.
Yeah. So this, again, it goes into the information, and as we're going through this, if you notice, a lot of these things are really easy to do. They're easy to do and easy not to do, but there has to be some rigor behind it. And what we mean by the show notes, again, so you have your podcast page, you have the description on top, you have the elements, you have the transcript, etc. But then below that, if there's any additional information that you're adding to that page, you want to be as specific as possible. Again, full name, exact title. So if I want to be known as one thing, one title, I cross-pollinate and I make sure that on my LinkedIn, the title is the same as what I have on my website. That is the same that is on any other page that I have. So just be really diligent about that because it matters. The company name, right? Sometimes somebody may just do a Google or a ChatGPT search on your name. I'm Patty Dominguez, which is a fairly common name. And there's lots of other Patty Dominguez's and it gets confused. So I have to watch that like a hawk. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you're doing that scan, if you will. Any of the links that you have, your books, your landing page, your bridge pages, all of the funnel pages and things like that, have the things and then check them to make sure. And then the other thing that's really helpful is having a list of specific questions. Typically, if you really want to take it to the next level, add in FAQs. So one thing that Rob said, he's like, hey, I'm adding FAQs to the blog. He and I had a conversation. Again, we're in an answer first mindset when it comes to AI. AI is looking for answers first, which is why FAQs on your pages do so well. So that's the kind of information that you want to make sure that you're including on this particular type of page. Rob.
Yeah, the FAQ stuff is, again, it to me, it wasn't something that was apparent, but it's very logical from behind the scenes, which is great. So, again, formatting things is actual questions. So people don't have to parse things, but also AI, is seeing that right at the top. Just thinking about how people use AI, they type that question into the answer engine. And if your episode page has that answer at the top, if you've kind of done that match, if that lines up, I mean, you're literally matching the search intent at a one-to-one text level. And I think that's someplace that an AI will go very deeply into when it comes to going, oh, I have found exactly what I'm looking for.
Yep.
All right. This is the fun part. This is how the next part is how I have so much work to do with my own website.
Yeah. So with element 4, and again, so we have this one and just another one, but you want to have a page on your website for every episode like we talked about. Here's where take a look at the clean URL structure. That's something that I didn't necessarily have on mine. There's a little bit of a hodgepodge of those URLs. Those structures do make sense. So /podcast, /episode name, et cetera, et cetera. So have a link architecture, if you will, to how your episodes are posted on your website. Okay. And then the title, the short answer, H1, H2 tags are really important now. Again, we're doing this for the AI. So all of these elements are living on that one page. Your embedded player is really important. And I did talk about the fact that you want to have your episode posted on YouTube if you have a video podcast. If you don't, you can just have it where it's one scene and the audio is playing. That still counts on YouTube, right? Because you might have seen that there's those tools that will post your episode and just be the cover art, if you will, with the audios. That still counts. So in case anybody was thinking like, well, I don't do a video podcast, is that going to hurt me? No, it doesn't. So again, you want to have that embedded player in there. Another key thing, and this they're getting more strict about eventually, is it's happening now, if you will, where most people are looking at stuff on their mobile. So if your pages are not mobile friendly, I know that sounds almost ludicrous, but they will ding you. They meaning Google will ding you, or the whatever browser you're using or the LLM that you're using, it's going to ding you. So you want to make sure that your page is loading fast. And all of these are qualifiers for you to be found because of the habits that people have. And so that's looking for how efficient, how optimized are you, if in fact you are. And if it's not, again, AI is going to skip you. So don't let that be you.
There's so much to dissect there. And I think the thing that didn't used to be that way, at least from my experience, Patty, was that for the longest time, we told folks, like, if you have just an audio podcast, it's really not a great thing to put it on YouTube. And that has changed, obviously. Now you have to do the things that you're describing to support that. because if you're not, it's not going to work very well, and you're going to get those 3 downloads or whatever it might be. The other one thing I wanted to add with this, and this is not an AI thing, but like with audio podcasts, you mentioned the still scene and things like that. Having a really good thumbnail, like that is the one thing over the past year that I have worked and worked and worked on, and I'm still not like the world's greatest thumbnail designer. Your thumbnail carries disproportionate amounts of weight. But if you can pair that, if you can get people using that thumbnail to your audio only podcast and get that stay time by hooking them in the first 6 seconds or so, that's going to be tremendously valuable for your reach on YouTube, because that's where it's going to start to get that traction. And again, I'm not talking that you're going to have 1 million views or anything like that. I'm talking that's the difference between 0 to 3 and 10 to 30 in that case. But again, that's still a tenfold increase. And again, in this case, many B2B podcasts don't get those big, huge download numbers. Yes, there are some, but most of these are niche, which is just a very interesting thing. So, last thought on that from me, I guess, is that, your own domain is where your authority really matters. Spotify links build Spotify's authority, YouTube links build YouTube's authority, but I think the website is, the one place, don't build your house on rented land. And that's where this really comes in for folks. And I know you've probably heard that before if you own if you own or run a podcast, but in this case, it's probably the best thing you can do for your show. I would say this, this 2 or 3 quarters, wouldn't you? Or so would you think? What do you think about that, Patty?
Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely agree. You should never build your empire on rented land. That just goes to show you. So, okay, as we go into element 5, we're bringing it home. And this is what we're talking about, is like having your podcast in the right places to share in the right order. And what I covered before, and I kind of gave it all away at the beginning, but it's having your full episode on YouTube. And don't forget, with a proper thumbnail, as Rob said, you can have your static image there and the audio playing. And here's another one. I messed this up too, 400 episodes in. I wish somebody would have told me this, around how do you title your podcast episode. And again, if we're living in an answer first thought process for AI to find you, here's an example. How to onboard enterprise SaaS clients is way better for AI to find you versus episode 47, a conversation with John Smith. Who cares? The AI doesn't care about that. The AI is looking to feed answers to the people that are looking who have those questions. Okay. And again, you want to have the description, the timestamps, the guest info. Again, we want to have rigor around that, around the proper names and the links and all the things. And then I know that our friend here, Rob, has a brilliant strategy for compartmentalizing that podcast episode. And how do you repurpose it? So there's strategy behind that where you can turn it into different clips so that it's not only on YouTube, main platform, but YouTube Shorts and other channels, wherever you may be, wherever your ideal customer is hanging out. So there's that. There's a whole other strategy for that. And so just to wrap up element 5, again, having your full episode on Spotify and Apple is great. All the things, if you can add a link back to your website, that's always optimal. If you have a LinkedIn, take those clips again with a proper strategy, have it written, have a post pulling those quotables or the name or what have you, because now LinkedIn is becoming such a hub for AI to crawl, which is really brilliant for those people that understand the power of LinkedIn. I'm talking to you, Melissa Cohen. It's so interesting because I think about LinkedIn. I think she comes to mind. So it's just so great what's happening on LinkedIn. And again, what you want to skip, TikTok and Instagram are fine if you have time, but they're not where, if you are a B2B podcast, if you want to build your authority, that's not necessarily where it's living. So don't waste your effort on them unless your buyers are absolutely there. And so to wrap this all up, you have your episode stack, all 5 coming together. These are actionable for you to take advantage of. And if you think about it, it's not hard, but the power and the longevity that you get out of these efforts when you have the proper, right, like the proper framework and being very specific and diligent and consistent, it's going to give you wins so that you can be found. So that's it, Rob. That's what I have for the episode stack.
That's awesome. So we're in good shape here. I guess just a couple closing thoughts on that. Patty, you mentioned again things like the people putting the episode number in their titles. That's not crawled. Apple came out in summer of 2021 and they said, don't do that. Do not do that on Spotify. Don't do it on Apple. Don't do it on YouTube. That
Mm,
doesn't tell people. Episode 47 does not people intrigue, if you will. So, making sure your titles are great, making sure your thumbnails are great, making sure that when you are on YouTube and the platforms you should be on. Again, LinkedIn, I think for much of this audience here is going to be probably the primary one outside of YouTube. I would almost, in some cases, flip those on their head, just because if you're selling an enterprise software or something like that, yes, you can have a YouTube presence, but you're probably going to be talking more to people on a LinkedIn environment, which is great. So that was just a fantastic rundown of everything, Patty. Thank you so much for all of that information. Let's pump
pleasure.
the brakes here. And this has been a lot of information, so let's all decompress a moment. As I mentioned a couple times throughout here, I know we've got a couple questions over there. If you have more questions here about what we've talked about today, let's get that taken care of right now. We're going to, Bernie, probably put, what do you think, 3 minutes on the clock here and then sprint to the end because, again, this is a packed hour. So let's see here. Let's take the first one here from our good friend at Mouthy Broad Media. So glad you're here. This is AEO. Where does this go again? Patty, I think this one's for you. When it comes to the AEO questions and things like that, where should those be going on web pages?
So AEO is the entire thing that we talked about today. It's the all-encompassing when you are looking at having a podcast strategy. So the goal is to be found, right? And so the AEO activity we talked about, have your podcast on its own designated podcast page. We gave you the structure for that. And the intention is you want to have the answer first summary at the top. You can have your audio player in there. You can have your transcripts in there. You can have some FAQs and all your links. That effort holistically is what we're talking about AEO, answer engine optimization. Just think of it this way. The AI machines are looking to help you if you are ready to be helped. And in order to be helped, you have to have these elements in place of everything we talked about today. If not, it's going to skip you. It's really as easy as that and brutal at the same time.
Yes, most definitely. All right, we'll move to the next question here. Hey, another one there. And this one, I think I'll tackle this one. The carousel of static images. We were talking about the YouTube episodes of the audio only. And then instead of just having the one image, having a carousel of them. I mean, depending on how, is somebody going to stick around after a static image for, waiting for it to change 2 minutes later? I'm not sure. If it's something you wanted to invest time into, go for it. If you want to have it on a 30-second still loop and loop that loop like 10 times for the episode, I don't think it's going to have any impact on what you're doing because it is just that still image, and there's that viewer's going to go, nothing's happening. And with the way people's attention spans are, I don't believe they're not going to sit there for 30 seconds and say, well, I think it's going to change. That may be something that they come back to later, but yeah, and that's a good point. All of podcasting is experimental. And so I would encourage you to make the experiment. If I were making it, I would not expect great results from it, though. So that would be where I'd go from that. So let's see here. URLs, very good one here. Patty, back to you. Is length an issue? And I know we want those URL slugs to be punchy. That last bit. Is length ever an issue?
I wish I had a finite answer in terms of the amount of characters or what have you, but just kind of truncate how people would find you, right? Like
Yep.
how to launch a SaaS. I'm just being super arbitrary. 5 easy steps to increase your audience. So if you think about it again, very truncated wherever possible, because you can't go on and on and on and on, but it's a long tail enough to that it's answering their specific, they meaning whoever's looking for an answer. That would be helpful.
Definitely. And that little sound means, hey, it's time to move on with this, which is great. If you have more questions, pour them in there. And we're going to sprint to the finish here. The last 9 minutes is back to me. So here we go. Section 4, buyer intent episode design, which is a fun one. So here we go. There is a real difference between an episode designed to make a guest experience great and one that's designed to become a reference point for AI and for buyers. So the best shows do both of these well, and the worst lean too far in one direction or the other. I want you to think about the last episode topic you chose for your podcast if you run one, Or if you only guest on shows, think about the last topic you pitched to a host, perhaps, if you're in that category. Did you choose that topic because it was interesting, or because the guest wanted to talk about it, or you wanted to talk about it, or because it fit your content calendar? Those are all great reasons to make an episode, but none of them are the reason that an episode will get cited by an AI tool 6 months from now when somebody asks a relevant question about it to an answer engine. So here's what actually drives citation. Uh, your episode answered a specific question that your ideal buyer already asked. It's not a broad topic. It's a very specific question, much like those FAQs that Patty was talking about. And the answer in your episode is better than anything else that exists on that question as judged by the AI. So think in buyer questions, not in subjects. It's really kind of tough to do. I will not tell you this is easy, but if we frame it this way, it might help. SaaS onboarding is a subject. Why do enterprise SaaS clients churn in the first 90 days, and how do I stop it? Is a buyer question. The former gets filed, the latter might get cited. So I would encourage you to use tools like Answer the Public, your own AI tools that you love and see every day, and ask them, what are people asking AI about your topic? And it sounds like a very, what's that called? The snake eating its tail, Ouroboros thing. It's consuming itself, but it actually will help you find signals on what buyers are researching right now. Again, the FAQs on your page, one of the highest leverage moves you can make. AI is already an answer engine. And if your page is structured around questions and answers, you're writing in the language that the AI speaks. And Patty's Element 3 set this up. That list of questions and answers is a good way to organize things and help your readers, but it's also like the AI bait for exactly the right search questions. So the guest who excites you as a host and the guest who serves your buyer are not always the same person. But be intentional about which episodes are relationship builders of people you can work with and which are designed for content and discovery and citation. This is something I advise all of my customers from, and their primary goal with their podcast is to convert their guests into customers and their audience into customers. But if they don't consider that their show can be made better by some of their guests being there purely for content and answers, that's going to hinder the show's success. Okay. It is okay to have guests that rock for content to mix into your show, and I actually strongly recommend that. Okay. Choosing topics that are great content and generate pipeline. Actually, I think we want to go to this poll here. When you choose podcast topics, Bernie, if you throw that up for us, as a host or when pitching a guest, what should drive the discussion most often? And there is actually a right answer to this. Is it what the guest wants to talk about, what's trending, what my ideal client is actually asking or struggling with, or whatever fits that content calendar? Couple answers coming in here, which is great. And we'll shut that one down there, Bernie. We'll be in good shape. Almost everybody's answered. Yeah, pretty much everybody's got that dialed in. The right answer is actually C, which is outstanding. My own show can drift towards A and D, and that's what keeps production moving. But shifting from what do we have to talk about this week to what our buyer needs answered right now, that's what stops a show from being a content channel and starts it becoming a content asset down the line. So we should be in good shape. So I want to close this out by talking about something that doesn't come up on a download dashboard. There's a concept that I think a lot of shows that I work with on create, and it's called a parasocial relationship. It's very clinical. It's very like medical term, but it's one of the most powerful forces in content so long as it stays healthy. When someone listens to a podcast, even a niche B2B show, they start to form a low-level relationship with the host. It's parasocial relationships are by the design of the word. It's one-sided. It's not a friendship. It can evolve into one, and it hopefully never evolves the opposite direction of that into fan obsession. Most often, it's a very quiet familiarity. You know the type. You know the people that you listen to. You know how they think. You know what they value. You know their voice. That familiarity is what makes the difference when a buyer is in the decision stage. They've heard you. They trust you before you've ever even spoken, really. And they point to your show in a conversation with their team. They send an episode to a colleague. That's what you want to create with your podcast, a compounding asset. But here's the thing. Parasocial relationships only form if people come back. It's not a one-time thing. I have listened to hundreds of podcasts once. And I don't think about the people that ran them ever again. People only come back to the shows that are consistently valuable, consistently findable, and consistently theirs. It's a watering hole. It's specific, it's deep, it's trustworthy, it's something everybody needs. So, what we've built today for you is a complete picture of how that happens. The three signals that give you the foundation, the episode stack gives you every piece of content, that sort of like ability to reach for the sky, and the buyer intent design makes sure what's found is worth reading. And when that's all working together, your podcast compounds. Episodes from 2 years ago still get cited because they have the great answers.
Yep.
New buyers find you through what they're searching in an AI tool with their questions. And the outstanding layout that Patty has described, identity, credibility, visibility, structure, topic intent, all points back to the same outcome. So, what you're walking away with today: one, great podcasts get overlooked because they're invisible to the systems that buyers use to find expertise. This is all very fixable. Two, Patty walked us through the three signals: identity, credibility, visibility. Each one of them reinforces the other. You have to lift all of them at the same time. Otherwise, it does not work. Three, episode stack. 5 concrete elements that every episode needs to be discovered, trusted, and cited. 4, topic design is the lever that most people aren't pulling. When your episodes are built around the questions for your buyers, that's where you stop being just a content channel and become a reference source. And number 5, when you build all of this deliberately, your show does compound. It keeps working. It keeps coming back to the top day after day, year in, year out, and it builds trust before a buyer ever reaches out and talks to you. So, just a few things before we close out here. Resources and next steps. I want to take a major moment to recognize Patty and her leading edge thinking on this. I have learned so much from you, Patty, in the past few months, and we are still implementing an absolute truckload of it for our own processes. Your uptake on the information that we presented today may be faster or slower as an attendee here, depending on your business needs, and that's okay. The important thing for all of you here in attendance is that you've got the knowledge to make that change at your own pace. I will be sending out a replay of this on YouTube as soon as possible, as soon as we've got it uploaded. I'm guessing that'll be probably tomorrow afternoon. You'll also be receiving the first 2 modules of our Pitch Lab course. So if you do guest on podcasts, it's a thank you for being here. And if you want to dig deeper into how to position that yourself as a guest or build your show, there is a code there. You see dive bars. That is part of the Pitch Lab. You should always play the dive bars when it comes to podcasts. That'll give you 15% off the full course. And Patty, I know people here know that I'm your B2B podcast guy, but where can folks find you, and what's their next step for someone who wants to go deeper with what you shared today and work with you, my friend?
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for this time. You can find me on LinkedIn, Patty Dominguez. It's Patty with a Y, or my website is moreleverage.io, moreleverage.io. And
Good deal.
Really thank you for this, Rob.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. Well, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to open up the floor for questions again for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Thanks for spending your time with us today. Go make some great things, and we'll see you next time. We had another one of these in June on the... Let me pull up the calendar here. The other one on June is on the 24th, same time, and we'll be sending out invites for that. You'll see it on LinkedIn, of course, and if you are subscribed to our emails as well, you'll be in great shape. Cool. All right, Bernie, let's kick this over to question mode. I think I'm gonna sit down for this because I've been on my feet for the last hour and 20 or so. So
Absolutely. All right, guys. Obviously, we have a little bit of extra time for some questions. We're at time for the event in and of itself, so you're more than welcome to stay and ask any questions. We've got Rob and Patty's information in the chat if you want to connect with them, schedule time with them to go deeper down the rabbit hole. Otherwise, that'll conclude our webinar for today. And I want to wish you a great rest of the day if you don't have any questions.
All right, I did see one that was up here, I think, from the chat here from Steven. If you think talk for a minute about chain of activities that a user takes. Okay. I gather more and more people are choosing to not click through a website and are getting all the answers they need solely from the AI summary in Google. If that's the case, how much does it drive downloads to your B2B podcast to arrange your content for? Ooh, that's a really good question, Steve. So
I'm just reading about that this morning, and I gather the statistics are a little stark. And a lot of places that, a lot of businesses that rely on the traffic, the click through, it's just not happening because all the answers are right there.
Yeah, and I'm actually this came into my mind here. I saw, I think, very, very similar articles, is that like Google's almost like cannibalizing its own click business to do this like AEO thing, which is like, is that a good idea, guys? But I know that on my website we have an article about let me get there so I can get to the exact title, but it's a clickless strategy. My buddy who is my right hand man here at Westport, he's a very talented writer, and he cooked this up. Here we go. Zero click podcast strategy, dominating LinkedIn without the link. I think this may be helpful. I'm going to pop it in the chat here for everybody, which is great. That's a pretty good read, because I think it takes a microcosm, Stephen, of what you're asking about. You know, it's specifically for LinkedIn, but it's one of those things where, you know, people aren't clicking links. So how do you get people to where they need to be? You know, a lot of it comes from video, I think, is one of the big things where you're putting people into the, like, I don't want to say doom scrolling, but like the keeping them in that like addict mode almost of like, oh, I got to see more of this and things like that. And so I think that's one. The other thing is, again, with like this, the socials, and this is one thing that I resisted this a lot because it was a very, it's a lot of lift. And for a time, the way that at least LinkedIn was set up, it didn't seem to provide the juice for the squeeze. Carousel decks. That's the one thing. And actually, later this summer, my team and I are refitting our offerings for everybody to, of course, incorporate what Patty has taught us over the past few months here and things like that. But retooling what we're offering to our customers. And one of the things, as much as we know that they're a lot of work, is looking back at those decks where people spend time and linger on them. So creating content that people will linger on, whether that's video or it's stills. I think those LinkedIn decks, we decided like an 8 to 10 slide deck that somebody can thumb through is where it's good to go there. So that's what I have to say on that one so far. Again, that's so. This is an evolving situation because, I mean, technology is moving really fast. The evolution of what like my industry has gone through in the past 3 years, I would argue, is what most industries go through in a century. It's absolutely insane. I've been in some positions where the industry moves fast, and it's if you spend 1 year at a place, it's like spending 4 years somewhere else. I've done that. This is way above that. So I hope that answered at least part of your question in this case. Otherwise, feel free to ask a follow-up. All right. Sounds good, man. Excellent. Questions from anybody else? Don, it's good to see you. JJ, it's good to see you, by the way. I haven't seen you guys in just half a hot minute here. So, yeah, any other questions? Or just been fabulous to have everybody along for the ride. And I think that went very well, Patty. Thank you so much for all of your great content.
Yeah, happy to do that. Happy to share.
Yeah.
It's important, y'all. Like, please, like, the information we shared is so helpful if you just take advantage of it. And I know the article that Rob posted is like right on the money. I completely agree with all of that. And so if you think about the strategy around how to promote your podcast, is well, how do you make it answer first? How do you synthesize and simplify so that your podcast is the easiest probability to be found? Like, you got to make it easy for them. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen.
Got it. Good deal. We'll take another 30 seconds here. If anybody has any, Bernie, what do you say? Questions, comments, concerns, angry outbursts? I think many of us know that phrase from you, sir.
You nailed it. That's right. Comments, questions, concerns, or angry outbursts. Did anything
Yes.
Rob or Patty say really pissed you off today?
Good deal.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, wonderful to see so many smiling faces today. Thank you all. Wendy, I didn't get a chance to shout you out either, but yeah, thanks again for coming, everybody. We'll see you next time.